This presentation, titled Pandemic Readiness and Your Emergency Response Plan, comes to us from Shawna Wagner. Shawna is the Technical Manager, Food and Beverage, North America for DNV GL Business Assurance. She's been honing her skills in the food industry for 22 years. Shawna's background is rich and varied and includes positions in service, manufacturing, regulatory, and third-party auditing. Currently, she's the lead auditor for SQF, FSSC, BRC, and PAACO. Wagner also holds a license for a certified professional in food safety through the NEHA organization. She was a 2018 SQF Auditor of the Year finalist and was named the Auditor of the Year for SQF in 2019. And with that, take it away, Shawna.
All right, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for listening to my PowerPoint here on the pandemic readiness and your emergency response plan. As you all can imagine, one of the reasons that I have chosen to speak about this is due to the crisis that we're currently experiencing here in 2020 due to the COVID-19. As Mike had a wonderful intro about myself, here's a little slide of myself and my background. I am the technical manager for the food and beverage sector for DNVGL, and here's a couple PowerPoints here about me. Just a little bit about the company that I work for. DNVGL is one of the world's leading certification bodies. We are located in more than 180 countries. We have about 13,000 employees. We work with approximately 10,000 different companies around the world, and we do third-party certification to the BRC, the FSSC, IFS, and SQF. We also do other certifications such as ISO 9001, 14001, 18001, to name some of the bigger ones. Here you'll see where we are located, where our auditors are located. As you can see, worldwide we have about 3,000 auditors. We have about 500 in the Americas. And one big thing that DNVGL looks at is to safeguard life, property, and the environment. We deliver assurance through certification and verification. We also do second-party assessments for suppliers. We also take part in training needs for our customers. And just a little slide here. We are a part of blockchain now. And so with products, with our customers who have decided to go that route, you can use a QR code, scan the My Story on the product, and learn everything about the product. And here's just a little slide about how the blockchain works. It's rather new. It's been in place now for approximately 1 year. We've seen it grow pretty exponentially. So kicking off into the actual webinar itself here, again, as you guys are aware, we are in this crisis situation. And this is a very interesting crisis situation because it's not something for the food world that we've seen at a global scale before, but not just necessarily in the food world. Most of us who are working have actually never experienced a pandemic that has hit so close to home. So here, people that are working in the food safety management, we're very familiar with the requirements for our emergency planning, our crisis management, or your business continuity. However, because we've never experienced this, are we missing items in these plans to ensure that your business can continue with its certification? And so that's what we're going to discuss today. So your emergency response plan, all the sites that are out there, if you guys are certified to a third-party GFSI scheme, you are required to have an emergency response plan or a business continuity plan, as they're sometimes referred to. Now, as an auditor, when we look at these plans, some of the likely items in them talk about fires, floods, power outages, earthquake, tornadoes, items that we experience, I don't want to say all the time, but they're not necessarily uncommon. We see your recall or withdrawal procedures in them, and how if your company would have this kind of a crisis, how you would handle that, calling your customers, your suppliers, how you would handle that on a business standpoint, if the business could stay open. And then, of course, if you have other processing sites. So we do have companies out there that I call it using a sister site or a co-manufacturer, where they would manufacture part of your products for you. And again, these are usually all captured in the emergency response plan. However, I can say, being an auditor now for over 11 years, that I've not seen an emergency response plan have a pandemic listed in it. So next slide here, thinking about going through a pandemic and other extraordinary events. So this is new to us all. When we look at your emergency response plan, certainly this COVID-19 has led us to other avenues and what we have to think about, and how we have to change our ways of working, change our ways of thinking, and change how our employees are engaging in the business. So things to think about in your site: travel restrictions. Can employees get to your site? This is corporate. These are local employees. And how are they going to get there? Has the government shut down? Are you at a stay-at-home order? Can we not fly? And these are things that we're experiencing now. So that leads to a reduced workforce. If you have that in your site, can you continue to run? If you cannot, do you have something in place where you can move product to maybe a sister site, a co-manufacturer who may not be in the same situation you are? A pandemic can change from state to state. It can change from country to country. So these are things that we want you to start thinking about as you build this within your plan. A change in personal protective equipment. Do you need to add masks, add face shields? Do we need to start looking at gloves? Some sites already may have these in place. Maybe you need to think of how often they need to be sanitized. Can the employee take them home? Additional monitoring of employees. One thing that has come across my desk a couple times in the past month is if it's permitted to take the temperature of employees as they come into the building. Can you have access to their health records? And these are all things that could be different from state to state or at a local level that you at the site would need to look into. Also, we're dealing with now being able to or having to work from home. So that remote work environment, is that something that the site can sustain? Is it safe? Is the data that you're collecting, is it secured? These are all questions. This is a very in-depth topic. The other thing I generally see with these emergency response plans is that the annual exercise, it's done, but sometimes it's felt that the exercise is just done as a checkbox exercise. We put it in there, we say maybe the site underwent a power outage, and we found extra refrigeration for our product and kind of cross this off the list. Now, we are suggesting that you strengthen that exercise, and make sure you get everyone involved. Make sure your emergency numbers are up to date. We like to see that you actually call maybe some of your suppliers. Make sure your contacts are current for your suppliers, for your ingredients, anything of that nature. And then ensure that your plan is actually up to date. A lot of times it's not touched for 12 months. It's sitting on the shelf. It's collecting dust, which is usually a good thing because we're not going through an emergency at that time. But when things like this pop up and they sort of come out of the blue, it is very nice for sites to have something that's there at their fingertips that they've thought out, and it's not in the heat of the moment where you can cause more damage to your business than actually having something that's under control, well thought out, and moving forward and making, you know, the small changes that you may need to make during the time of your extraordinary event. So your pandemic readiness here. So one of my aims of the discussion is to show the listeners, or let the listeners know during a pandemic such as this COVID-19, how you're going to keep your organization certified, or some examples of how to do that, and continue in compliance with the scheme of your choice so that you can supply safe products for your customers and or consumers. So, and the big question is, what is a pandemic? Pandemics are described as an epidemic of a disease that has spread across a large region. So for instance, multiple continents or worldwide. Again, we're living the example now of the COVID-19 that is a pandemic, but for those of you that are history buffs, the Black Plague, AIDS, HIV, the Spanish flu, those are some of the big threes that I can think of that have been labeled as pandemics. So the readiness, is your food manufacturing site at risk? Well, the only people that can say that is those that are working at that site. Each site will be different. So those of you who are in the food manufacturing and have done HACCP plans or the HARP plans, you have probably heard of severity versus consequence. And this is how we come up with a risk, whether it be low, medium, or high. And that's looking at everything in general, what you're making, how you're making it, how many employees you may have, and then what is the consequence of all of this coming into play, whether it's being that reduced workforce, whether it's going to be adding the PPE. So it's almost doing a risk analysis of HACCP, but just for a pandemic all over again. One of my big things that I tell my clients is make sure that you're getting facts when you start to do this risk assessment, and watch for unclear information. So, getting the facts, talk to your local health departments, making that communication with them, the CDC, Center of Disease Control, and then the WHO, so the World Health Organization. These are three really good places to get facts. Where we shouldn't be getting facts, or where facts can sometimes get skewed. Social media, so your Facebooks, your Instagrams, your Twitters, sometimes not the best place to get facts. Just Googling on the internet, and that can always bring you an array of information, but is it really the facts? So try to keep to those regulatory governments, even the FDA, USDA, people like that. Instead of relying on the social media. Once we get those facts, again, you need to risk assess that information. What do you manufacture? Do you manufacture food that is touched a lot by your employees? Do your employees stand over top of it? Is it covered product? Employees, how many do you have? Do you have 10? Do you have 1,000 that come in per day? Visitors, do you have visitors that come every day? Where do they come from? Are they traveling internationally? Are they within your company, not within your company? And also the location of your facility. Are you in a high-risk area? What's considered high risk? So these are all questions that you can start to ask yourself as you build this pandemic readiness risk response. And as you build that, putting that into your emergency response plan. So the last couple slides here that I have is taking a deeper dive into some of these situations. So a deeper dive into the manufacturing. Again, does your process or your product create additional risk? So look at your product. Do you have the open product, or do you have a closed product? A plant that is manufacturing something as here in the picture, a ready-to-eat donut versus a plant that may make a ready-to-drink Powerade per se, those are made completely different, where that liquid is going to be enclosed, it's all in piping, and this donut, as you can see in the picture here, is out in the open. These are going to have completely different risks, even if the plant is in, let's say, the same city. Temperature control of your product and how it affects bacteria and viruses. So, this is where some of the science comes into play. And as you can dig into the facts with those regulatory references, you may be able to pick up on items that can help control things. So, for example, this virus is susceptible to high temperatures. So do you have a kill step in the operation like these donuts do? They go through a frying process. Would that be enough to kill the virus if it happened to get on that food product, or if it was transferred from person to food? Refrigerating or freezing, would that kill the virus and or bacteria? So there are things in the operation that you should look at to see if that could help control the circumstances. So also that ties in with storage practices. Are you storing things in sealed boxes? How are they getting handled? How many steps is it before they get to the consumer? Or are they being shipped to a warehouse and stored? And does that warehouse meet your guidelines of what you have in handling the product? And what that also does is create discussion around traceability. And for those of you that are GFSI certified to a standard, we all know that traceability is very heavily looked at from all your suppliers to the site. And to the consumer or customer. Again, this is all part of the extraordinary events, including pandemics. Employees and visitors. I would say during this COVID-19, this is probably the highest amount of questions that I receive daily on what to do with employees and visitors. Again, this is going to be different for each plant and each situation and what you're manufacturing, and again, where this plant is located. But some of the things that we've looked into, also the recommendations from CDC and FDA is, are you going to have a change in GMP? What does that mean? Maybe your employees come in and they hand wash as they come into manufacturing and as needed. Now, do you put something in place where maybe they have to do a mandatory hand wash break every 2 hours? And again, this is just an example, but these are items that can certainly help you reduce the risk. PPE changes, the addition of face masks, the addition of cloth masks. These could be completely different. The N95 respirators. And if you do put these in place, how is the sanitation of these to be handled? Is that going to be handled by the plant? Is that going to be handled by the employee? Are they, again, going to the employee's home, coming back into your site? So there's a lot of questions that you have to ask yourself, ask your employees, ask the management team to ensure that you're not creating the risk, that you're actually going to decrease the risk with the items that you're putting in place. And again, I can't stress enough to always check with your local health departments, making sure that you're not crossing over any kind of HIPAA laws. We have seen some sites implement taking the temperature of employees. And again, as far as your third-party certifications go, there's nothing in that language that says that you have to do that, but there's nothing in there that says you can't do that. So putting in more steps, as always, could be an inconvenience to a site, and it takes more time. But if we're not having to dig out our emergency response plan, then always the better. And I want to thank everyone for listening to my webinar for the pandemic readiness and your emergency response plan. I hope that this has given you an insight or a little bit of a start on what to do with your plan, and just a little bit of a thought on how to strengthen it, make it a continuous improvement, and hopefully have you ready for any kind of pandemic that could either flare up again. Obviously, we're not out of the COVID-19 situation yet, but this could be, obviously, this may not be the last one that we see in our lifetime. So thank you again for listening.
And thank you, Shawna Wagner, for that look at planning and auditing for pandemic readiness. That concludes this presentation.